What's up, Go Show? It's been a while. We are back. Here's part one of my college football predictions for next season. First conference up, we are going to start with the Big 12. Up first in the Big 12 conference, I have them finishing last. I got the Houston Cougars. They came over from the American Conference. I don't see them doing that good this year. I do have them winning 4 games. I have them winning 3 of their out of conference, which is UTSA, Rice, and Sam Houston State. But I do have them beating Cincinnati. I feel like that game's just going to be like a trap game for Cincy. It's a home game for Houston. But other than that, I don't really expect much from this team, so I'm going to give them a 4-8 record, and they finish last in the Big 12. Finishing 13th, I got the Kansas Jayhawks. The Jayhawks were actually pretty solid last year, made a bowl game, but I don't really think Kansas is going to do it this year. I feel like they're going to be around the same win total. But all in all, I have them starting out really good, starting out 4-0. But then I have them going on a huge losing streak. I just feel like that one loss is going to peak a lot of losses for them. But I do have them upsetting Kansas State at home just to get a win on their resume. But other than that, they lose their last game at Cincy to not make a bowl game. So I got the Jayhawks going 5-7. Finishing 12th, we have Iowa State. I'm not really high on this team at all. I could see them finishing last in the Big 12, to be honest. But I do feel like they just have more like veteran experience on their team, and they've just been better than the teams I've listed behind them. I had them starting off the season with a win against Iowa, but then they lose in their rivalry game against Iowa. I could also see them losing at the Bobcats. Bobcats are actually a pretty solid football team, but I'm going to go with the Cyclones in that one. I do have them getting some pretty solid wins over like Oklahoma State and Kansas. But other than that, I don't really expect much from this team, and I have them going 4-8, not finishing well in the Big 12. This one might actually shock some people, but I got Baylor going 5-7. They do have a pretty nice roster, and they got Blake Sharpen returning at quarterback. But I just don't really think they're going to be as good as most people think. I do have them losing one of their out-of-conference games to Utah. And then I feel like their schedule is just very tough. They play Texas, TCU, at Cincinnati, Texas Tech. But all in all, I do think this team could exceed my predictions. I feel like this is kind of a low for them. I do have them winning against Texas Tech, Iowa State, Houston. But I do have them losing the last 3 games on their schedule at Kansas State and at TCU. Those are going to be really tough. And then West Virginia is a team I'm kind of high on, so I'm going to give West Virginia that one. But Baylor goes 5-7, and I feel like Blake Sharpen's going to end up transferring if that happens. Next team is another team that transferred to the Big 12, BYU. BYU has actually been pretty solid these last few years. They've always been in the top 25. But I do feel like them going to the Big 12 will decrease their record by quite a bit. I do have them going 2-1 in their out of conference games, but their loss is going to be at Arkansas. I also have them dropping one at Kansas, and at TCU, and at Texas, and at West Virginia. I feel like they're going to struggle on the road, but they do lose one game at home against Oklahoma. But other than that, they do good at home, but once they travel, BYU just becomes a different team. So I'm going to go BYU going 5-7 this year. Next up is another team that also transferred to the Big 12. We got the Cincinnati Bearcats. 2 years ago, they were peak performance, making the playoffs. But last year, they had a down year, and now they just lost Fickle, so I don't really see them being as good as most people think. They did get transfer Amari Jones. I think would be good, but I'm not really like too high on him. I wouldn't be shocked if Evan Prater went in during the season for him. But I do have them starting out 3-0, winning all of their out-of-conference games, and getting a good win at Pitt. But I do have them losing at BYU, Oklahoma, at Oklahoma State, and then I have them losing to both of their American teams, UCF and at Houston. I could see them beating both of them, but I'm going to go with the home team in that one, and I feel like Central Florida is just better than Cincinnati. And then I also have them losing at West Virginia. They do win Week 12 against Kansas to make a bowl game, but I have the Bearcats struggling this year, especially with losing Fickle. Next up, we got the West Virginia Mountaineers. I have them winning 2 out of their 3 conference games. They got a pretty tough out-of-conference schedule with playing Pitt and at Penn State. I do have them being Pitt this year, but I do have them getting dominated Week 1 against Penn State. Then they get a nice win against the Quints. Then I got them losing 2 more games against TCU and Texas Tech. And then winning 2 more, which is at Houston. And then I do have them getting an upset win at home against Oklahoma State. I do have them losing on the road at UCF and at Oklahoma, but then I have them winning 3 of the last 4, beating BYU, Cincy, and at Baylor. They don't have JT Daniels, but I do like Garrett Green in at quarterback. He did struggle in the games he's played, but I feel like once he gets the rhythm down, he will be fine. Now this is gonna actually shock a lot of people. I got TCU also going 7-5. They did win the Big 12 regular season last year, but ended up losing in the Big 12 championship. But man, they made the championship last year, so have them going 7-5 is kind of a hot take. I do have them starting out really hot, going 7-0. But I feel like once they lose at Kansas State, I feel like that's just gonna like spike a turn in their season, and they're gonna end up going on a 3-game losing streak, losing to Kansas State, and then at Texas Tech. I think that's a trap game. I feel like they'll be struggling right there. And then Texas is a team I'm high on this year, so I have them losing that. And then at Oklahoma at the last week of the season, that's gonna have a lot depending on it for Oklahoma in my eyes. So I'm going with Oklahoma winning that. TCU did lose a lot of draft people to the draft, and they lost their quarterback, Max Duggan. I mean, the current quarterback was probably going to be Chandler Morris. I don't see him having the same impact that Duggan did. But yeah, I got TCU going 7-5. I mean, that's a hot take for me. But comment where you guys have TCU going. Now we're in the top 6. I got another transfer. I got Central Florida. I feel like they kind of have an easier schedule than the other American teams did. I have them starting out 3-0, but I have them losing at Kansas State. I'd have them beating Baylor and Kansas, but that game against Oklahoma on the road is going to be really tough for them. And then I have them losing 2 of the last 3 games of the season, losing to Oklahoma State and at Texas Tech. I'm actually kind of high on Texas Tech this year. I have them upsetting a lot of people this year. But UCF does not have a disappointing season, even though they've switched conferences. And UCF is going 8-4, and I have them beating every single one of the people who transferred. Houston, Cincy, and if they did play BYU, I'd give them one against BYU too. But other than that, they go 3-0 out of conference, and then in conference they go 5-4. So I mean, the Big 12 is hard to predict, but give me Central Florida at 8-4. Finishing 5th, they got Texas Tech. Texas Tech is always a team that it don't matter who they play, they're either going to be really good or really bad. So they're kind of an inconsistent team. They do have a worse record than UCF, but in the Big 12, they did win the head-to-head game, and they had the same record in the Big 12. So that means they finished higher. But anyways, they go 2-1 in their out-of-conference games. They lose against Oregon. And then they start out the season with a 4-1 record, but then they lose at Baylor, Kansas State, and BYU. I mean, that 3-game losing streak, I feel like it will turn the season to form once they beat TCU, the team that won the Big 12 last year. And then they ended the season with a loss at Texas. Texas is going to be scary this year. But Texas Tech goes 7-5 and finishes 5th in the Big 12. Finishing 4th is a team that really disappointed last year. I have Oklahoma State going 8-4. I've been starting out the season 3-0, but then losing back-to-back games against Iowa State and Kansas State. Then I have them trading games with Kansas and West Virginia, beating Cincy, and then they end the season on a 3-game win streak, which puts them in maybe a good bowl game, but not really. But them losing Spencer Sanders is not really going to be helping. I do feel like all around in coaching, I feel like they got what they need. But Alan Bowman at quarterback is what I'm just very iffy about with Oklahoma State. This team could be 4-8, but the Big 12 is just really hard to predict, man. So I'm going to go with 8-4 with Oklahoma State. Without a better quarterback, I could see them winning more games. Finishing 3rd, the Big 12 champions, Kansas State. They no longer have Adrian Martinez because it was his last year, so they're going to have Will Howard starting at quarterback. I've been going 10-2, which is a pretty solid record. That's what they went last year, so I don't really have them dropping off. But I do have them losing 2 games. I have them losing to their in-state rival Week 11 at Kansas. I'm not sure what it is. I feel like the energy is going to be different in that game, so I'm going to go with Kansas in that one. And I have them losing at Texas. Texas, we're going to see where they're at in my standings. They're 1-2. But I feel like they're going to have a big season. But other than that, I feel like they're going to win every other game. And they're going to beat TCU once again. Kansas State could win the Big 12 again, in my opinion. And I wouldn't be shocked if they did. But the teams I have in front of them is who I think is going to win. finishing second and bouncing back from a horrendous year last year at the Oklahoma Sooners. I have them starting out 5-0, beating everyone in their sight. And then I do have them losing against Texas. I could also see them losing at Oklahoma State this year, and maybe even at BYU, because BYU is one of the teams that can get the upset. But all in all, I feel like Oklahoma's going to be back. I feel like Dylan Gabriel is going to have a really good season for him. I'm going Oklahoma to be in the Big 12 championship against whoever I have at number 1. And finally, finishing first, I have the Texas Longhorns. I have Quinn Ewers having one of the greatest seasons in Texas history. I only have them losing one game, which is at Alabama. If that was at home, I'm taking them 12-0. But I have Texas coming 11-1, only lost to Alabama. They do beat Oklahoma on the road, and they're going to end up facing them in the Big 12 championship. I just have a big season for Quinn Ewers, Xavier Worthy, and they got sophomore running back Jonathan Brooks. I feel like he's going to excel in this offense, and the Texas defense is looking really nice as well. So I'm going to go with Texas winning the Big 12 this year in the regular season and advancing to face Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship. Just to recap who I have in each spot for the Big 12 before I bring out my college football Big 12 championship predictions. Houston finishes 14th, Kansas finishes 13th, Iowa State 12th, Baylor 11th, BYU 10th, Cincinnati 9th, and West Virginia at 8. And then 1 through 7, at number 7 I got TCU, at number 6 I got Central Florida, at number 5 I have Texas Tech, at number 4 I got Oklahoma State, number 3 Kansas State, and then 1 and 2 Texas versus Oklahoma. And my championship prediction, I'm going to go with Texas winning 34-31 in a good old-fashioned Big 12 high-scoring game. Texas goes 12-1 and wins the Big 12 championships. Do they make the playoffs? Question mark. I guess we'll find out in one of my next videos. Comment down below who you have winning the Big 12. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time with my ACC predictions.